Welcome to the 2025 Dialogue, a masterclass series by the HR Association of India. I'm Neha Jignani, and today we are about to engage in a thought provoking conversation about building a culture of excellence, one where performance is at the heart of organizational success and continuous growth is the standard. Today, we have someone with us whose expertise has transformed organizations into high performing ecosystem. Welcoming Brillian SK. Brillian is the EVP and Chief People Officer at Times Pro, where he champions a performance driven culture with a strong focus on learner centric approaches. With expertise in talent development, recognition programs, and executive leadership coaching, he has been instrumental in building high performing teams and driving operational excellence. His strategic leadership supports Times Pro's expanding business landscape, empowering the workforce with impactful initiatives. Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining. It's a pleasure having you.
My pleasure, Neha. Thank you so much, and thank you, HRIA, for having me over.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really excited for this masterclass. Brilliant. So, to begin with, my first question is what, according to you, are some of the core elements of a performance driven culture?
No, it's very difficult to pinpoint one element and say this is what makes a performance driven culture. But I would think of it from multiple perspectives. One is, do people find value in what they are contributing to? Do they see a sense of pride in stretching? Are they looking at failing fast? Most of the times we get carried away by the fact that performance means only about success. I would say a true performance culture is where you can test waters, take calculated risk, see if it really works. And we've seen many organizations have a culture of what I would call as innovation as a practice that is being created. And that's what I would want to call as a true performance culture, where you're investing an amount of time, resources, energy, everything to make sure that you not only focus on the core of your work, which is, of course, the business as usual, but also invest in what is important for the future: products, services, anything that can actually transform the landscape. So I would say, from a larger perspective, it's not just about the performance, but how the staff feels engaged and connected to drive value, drive growth, and most important, stretch and maybe fail fast.
Right. So it highlights beautifully, Brilliant, that it's all about an ecosystem where people can see themselves performing and growing at the same times and being future ready. So thank you so much for that. My next question is, Brilliant, how can organization drive performance while ensuring employee well-being?
It's a tough one, right? When we think about employee well-being, what is it that comes to our mind? Or, many a times we are afraid to talk about things. We really feel that it's my personal space. And it's a difficult area to tread on, to be very honest, and especially given the concerns that people have today with regards to privacy, with regards to things that are happening all over. Why should I open up? And organizations are really struggling to identify that one thing that can really change. But what I would say is, can you think about focusing on productivity? Right? The biggest question, especially, sorry to say this, but most of us, having worked in Indian organizations, have always assumed that visibility equal to productivity. And I think that's the biggest deterrent to any performing organization. And it puts a lot of stress on the wellness of an individual. We've heard people talk about 70-hour work week. We've heard people talk about saying you should work all 7 days a week. I mean, it's not about that. The more you try to force fit people into your asks, I think you're losing the plot. So if you truly want to see yourself as a performance driven organization, start focusing on some elements like, what is the outcome that you're expecting, what is the timelines, and leave it to the individual to deliver it. And if the individual delivers it much before the timelines, I think the person should get free time. I mean, we don't talk about it. What we do, unfortunately, is if you see a plate little empty, you will put something there. You want to make sure that the plate is always full. But let me tell you, be it eating habits or performance driven organization, unless you give them space, unless you give them flexibility to make sure that they pick and choose what they want to do, at least for a small portion of the time that they invest in the company, I think we will not be able to build an organization and a performance culture which is focused on well-being. Make sure that employees don't feel stressed out. Today, the biggest cause of stress is the daily monitoring that happens. And I think while yes, certain teams may require it, don't get into a mode of micromanagement. The more you get into micromanagement, it starts becoming a claustrophobic organization. And I think that's where everyone loses the plot. So leave it to them. Yes, you need to have reviews, you need to focus on outcomes, but at the same time, leave it up to the individual to make sure they deliver on what they committed.
Sure. Thank you so much, Brilliant. It actually reminds me, a few days ago, I was just going through social media scrolling. So I came across a line where it said, being busy does not mean being fulfilled. Uh, and
Absolutely.
and to an extension to what you said, it also means being busy. It does not mean that you're being productive. You got to give your.
Definitely not.
So thank you so much. My next question, Brilliant, is what leadership behavior fosters accountability and innovation?
See, I think it starts with, as they say, charity begins at home. How does the leader himself or herself or themselves behave when you're put in any kind of a situation? Today, what we see is what they say, what they do, and what actually happens are three different things. Unfortunately, it's very close to what we see as politics, right? And that should not be the way leaders should be looking at it. Leaders should, I would say, ideally start looking at it from saying, can I create a culture where I build more leaders? If I stay busy, I've seen many leaders get into that mode of saying, let me do everything. You finish, you have a hierarchy defined, but do everything, but the final sign off will be by me. I think it's important for leaders to start delegating. Delegation is very, very essential, but it's not that you're shrugging off your responsibility. And that's where I would say, think about the OR of the boat, OAR: ownership, accountability, and responsibility. You cannot shrug off your accountability, you cannot shrug off ownership. Yes, you may delegate responsibilities, but make sure that you get things done in an effective manner. I would also add an element of saying that you need to have a mode where the carrot and stick approach is used effectively. It cannot always be a carrot and it cannot always be a stick, because both have their pros, both have their cons. But majority, if you look at it, use the carrot when appropriate, use the stick when it is appropriate. Because if you really need to drive performance in an organization, you need to be seen as someone who's approachable, open, at the same time, very focused on delivering outcomes. I'd like to bring one element of what I experienced in one of the past organizations that I worked with. The entire HR team would actually be working as friends, right? The HR head, we would have fun, we would joke, we would party, and every Friday we would go out. But at the same time, when it came to work, the role changed. And that helped us because we knew that we had a friend in the HR leader, but at the same time, he was someone who knew how to make sure that work gets done. So I think that relationship building is crucial. So if you're able to build relationship, and it's not about being a best friend, to be very honest. Many people get confused by saying, oh, I am not the best friend of this person. Doesn't matter. Build relationship where even if you don't get along with one person, you're able to drive outcomes. And we have seen it not just in politics but across. The Barack Obama Hillary Clinton example is great, the Alexander and Porus example is great, where people were so seemed as enemies, but they came together for a cause. Come together for a cause, work it out, and then move apart. It doesn't matter. But as long as you can work together, that's more important. In the entire scheme of thing, the leader should always remember that it's okay to disagree, but never be disagreeable. If you're able to do that, I think you got it.
Sure, thank you so much. That's a great point. I especially like the balance of being completely involved with your team, but when it comes to work, there should be that fine line, and it sets very clear expectations to the team to work forward. Thank you so much, Brilliant. So my next question, Brilliant, is how can organization design recognition programs or talent development initiatives that not only reward excellence but at the same time inspire continuous growth?
It is what we call as the dukti rug of HR. It's, whatever we try to do, and I'm reminded of a film dialogue which says, "Kitna bhi kuch kar lo bani, kuch na kuch to chhut hi jayega." So you'll not be able to satisfy everyone all the time, and I think that's the one golden philosophy that we should always remember. But what we need to look at is, and I'm just making a generalization; it's not applicable to all. Today, if we look at the workforce, we have a generation. For example, when I used to shift jobs, my mom always used to ask me, "PF hai kya company mein?" If there is PF, it means the company is good. There is, predictability for the future. Then came a generation which said, "I need more in hand. What's coming to me right now immediately is most important." And then there is the new generation, the Gen Zs and the millennials, who are looking at life completely different. They're talking about purpose. And to be very honest, I never asked the question ki kya purpose hai. We just got into a job and then we never looked back.
Right.
So if I have to create something which fits across the generations, it will be difficult. But what is essential is to identify what are the triggers that these generations can really uh, work with. So, for example, if I were to look at a generation that is PF focused, or the one who thinking about long term, so maybe my rewards and recognition can work around curating some long service awards or giving some monetary benefits, creating some sort of essence which tells them that post retirement you will be comfortable. For people who want everything in hand, no kind of money will ever satisfy them, and this is a ground reality we've all experienced. Unfortunately, companies can only do so much, right? They can't go beyond a particular point. And that's where I think organizations will have to start thinking about innovative ways of giving out ESOPs, thinking about DRBs or deferred retention bonuses. One of the organizations that I worked in had a very clear policy that if you join before 31st March, which was the deadline for staff to be onboarded, you become eligible for what was called as a discounted share purchase plan. So what it meant is if the share price is 100, employees are given share at the cost of 25 rupees. Now that's a very beautiful way of creating a mechanism. And then if you reach, let's say, 5 years of journey in your employment, then you're given additional stocks by the company. If you purchase X number of stocks, the company adds more. So, looking at life from a rewards and recognition perspective, I think it's becoming challenging for the organizations and especially for HR professionals because the one size fits all doesn't apply. Gone are the days when people would love when the team lunch was given. Right? Now, what happens is they will start dividing by number of people. So, if I get a voucher of 10,000, everyone will divide it by, अरे यार, end में तो मेरे को सिर्फ 1,000 rupees का ही खाने को मिलेगा. So we need to start thinking about horses for courses and create and curate something which has been not thought about. Yes, some of these will continue to stay like long service awards, the I would say direct outcome link. But can we think beyond? What is it that can help us retain the staff for a longer period is what will make a difference. And I think that's where the challenge as well as the opportunity is for HR.
Sure, absolutely. So what I could gather, Brilliant, is that it is a challenge for organization to tick all the boxes, given that how
So,
the workforce is evolving, the generation gaps, the expectations. But all the organization could strive to do is add value as much as possible to the workforce, creating an ecosystem where they are able to work, add value, they have a freedom, and they are being recognized, so to say.
so
Thank you. So this brings us to the last question, Brilliant, which is what key metrics or indicators that leaders can use to assess, the high performance culture and how they can sustain that culture?
if I could answer that, I think I would have found a solution for every leader in this world. But let's think about it, right? Most of the times we get stuck in managing and monitoring the daily routine, and that's where the entire problem comes in. What I had mentioned earlier is start looking at what is the value add that the person has done in the process. What is the kind of stretch that the person has believed, and what is the kind of risks that the person has taken, and can he, she, or they deliver it in a particular timeline. So if you're able to, you know, classify it into three broad bottlenecks where one is about adding value, second is about the stretch, And third is about innovation or risk taking that we call. I think that is a great measure. We always have heard Simon Sinek talk about start with the why. The why is known, right? We know what is to be done, but it's about how it gets done. And that I think is a metrics which, if we can get into fine tuning and defining, it will change life for the organization. I'll tell you, today many people, especially when we talk of sales, they say, "यार मैंने इतना बड़ा order ले लिया." Now what happens is you said about one number, but what they don't share about is this number will be achieved over a period of X number of years. So in reality, this year your revenue is just about 10% or 20% or 30%. Exaggeration should not be the core. It should be about what is here and now. So from a larger perspective, and I would say for non-business functions, it should be on what we would call as profitability as a measure, especially from a leadership perspective. What are you doing about cost control? I'm not saying cost cutting. I'm talking about cost control. How are you avoiding wastages? Small things which help. I used to work for an organization where each one of us, our desk had a table light, and every time we move, we had to switch it off. And end of the month, we would get a bill saying this is the number of units that your table has used. Now, what it does is it drives me towards achieving what we would call as sustainable goals, especially from a long-term perspective, right? And this I'm talking about 2008, 2009 forward-looking organization. So we need to start thinking beyond the obvious. What we do is what we get, and if we continue to do the same things, we will reap the same benefits. So if you want to grow, if you want to transform, and if you really want to think out of the box, value add, stretch, and innovation or risks. Create metrics and identify the how, recognize people for them by having the right kind of measures. That's what I would say.
Sure. Thank you so much. It's very crucial to define those metrics and tracking them, effectively to be able to reach to a point where you're able to say that, okay, this has worked for us, this can be improved. And, that way every organization can become future ready. So thank you so much, Brilliant. This brings us to the end of the masterclass. I thank you on behalf of HRAI for your valuable time. Your insights on leadership, performance, and growth has been extremely invaluable. And I'm sure our listeners are going to greatly benefit. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Neha. Thank you, HRAI.
Thank you. I'll just have a quick note to our listeners. Brilliant. Thank you so much for tuning into this masterclass. We hope this could add value to you and you enjoyed this conversation. Until we meet next time, keep inspiring and innovating. Thank you so much.
Thank you.